Hello, and welcome again to session 3 of Reference 360 Enablement Series. I'm Neelima, and in this session, I'm going to talk about reference data modeling. If you have gone through the previous videos of session 1 and session 2, you would be already familiar with what exactly is reference data, why is it important for organizations to manage their reference data lifecycle. And also, in session 2, I introduced you to Informatica's cloud solution, which is Reference 360 application, which customers or organizations can use to manage their reference data. In session 2, I also introduced and spoke about various user roles and privileges that are available in Reference 360. I also introduced the latest features of the homepage as well as custom logos, and also I gave an overview about the Explore panel that we have, and a little bit about search. Now, in today's session, I'm going to talk about reference data model. I'm going to give you an example of a basic data model that you can create in Reference 360, as well as an advanced data model that can be created and used in Reference 360. So for this session 3 agenda is we create a simple reference data model and populate data in it using IFI, which is intelligent file import. I'm also going to show you a functionality called as compare code list, in which you can compare two code lists side by side and view the code values there. We are also going to talk more about advanced data models that can be created using Reference 360. And I want to show a basic validation rule that you can create on the code list level and use it, in importing your data. Right. So that is the agenda for our session 3. Now let's start with creating a basic data model of Reference 360 and populating the data in it. So I just have one slide to talk about, and then I'll directly jump onto the environment and show you how it's exactly done. But first, before that, let's just refresh like what exactly are your Reference 360 assets. So whenever I say an asset in Reference 360, it can either mean a reference data set, which is at the highest level, and it's kind of a grouping of different code lists. And an example can be a country code. And when you create a reference data set, right, by default, an enterprise code list inside that gets created. And this we are doing it to kind of promote or, let the organizations kind of have that single version of truth, or have that, define their enterprise code list. So to promote that, we are, creating this enterprise code list by default. Then inside reference data set, you have code list, which is nothing but a container of the actual code or the records or the code values, that you see in your drop downs. So inside a code list, you can, have field names, types for the codes. And the example for code list can be, so reference data set is now country codes. And inside country codes, you can have code list of enterprise code list. You can have your ISO country code table. You can, have country codes coming from a different application, maybe SAP country codes, and various kinds of code list you can have inside a reference data set, right? The other two assets are crosswalk, which is nothing but a mapping of code list, and this is directional. Um, and most of the times the crosswalk is created, the mappings are created between, code list of the same reference data set. But now, as a latest enhancement, we are also providing customers to, create crosswalks between two different code lists from two different reference data sets. And then we have last asset is hierarchies, which is, nothing but building hierarchies or relationships out of several code lists. We'll talk more about crosswalks and hierarchies in our later session. But today we are going to focus more on creating a model based on reference data set and code list. All right. So this is how a country code model would be. You create a reference data set called as country codes. And then inside that, you can have code list, which again, as I mentioned earlier, is nothing but a container for your code values or the actual records. And it can be, from various applications like CRM, SAP, it can be ISO country code or enterprise country code. So you can have, various n number of code list inside your reference data. Now let's, directly go on to an application and, I'll talk more about these structures and data models. So let me just log in into a pod and go to reference 360. Now, in my last session, I had mentioned, by default, if you directly want to go to reference 360 and not come to this product selector tab, you can, just make it as favorite. So I have not made it as favorite. So let's go to reference 360. And go to explore panel. Now this explore panel is where all of your reference data exists. And if you see this explore panel, right, it shows me, various domains. It's because I have, grouped by various domains, all of these, reference data sets and code lists. I can, change the grouping, maybe based on entity. So if I select entity, I'll be able to see all the reference data set. And inside that, I can see code list. And if there are crosswalks, you can, drill down to the crosswalk. So you can, change how you want to see your reference data and, group by various things. So I can, even have status of it. So it will automatically group it by status, active and not specified. That those are the two status, that I have my assets defined. But let's, go back to domain, what we have. And you can also, filter by reference data set, code list, crosswalks, and hierarchies. And this I've spoken more in session 2. So let's again, group by domain. So when you want to create a data model, right, the first step would be to create a reference data set, right? So I click on new, and then, inside model, I'll be able to see various assets available that I can create, and I select reference data set and I click on create. So then I automatically come to summary tab, and this let's, start with the simple one, the country that I just showed in my slide, country code. Let's call it as demo country code. So you can give your name here, your description. You can also select domain. So country code will be in geography, and, you can have various domains, and you can even add more. And there are APIs available to add these enum values. Confidentiality, let's have it as public, and priority is high. Let's, keep it as high because country codes are like used in a lot of places. Also, you can define your status. Let's keep it as draft mode and let's not publish it. I can, also define effective date, and I can define like, it has been approved by whom. So I'll select my username. So it will be easier for me to kind of filter out and, search my reference data set. So this is the reference data set, which is nothing but grouping of all the code lists. That's what we are trying to create. Now, reference data set, again, it can be hierarchical in nature. Yeah, you can have a reference data set which can have, code list, which can again have code values, which is hierarchical in structure. Like, there is a parent, inside that you have a child, and, inside that you have child. So if you're aware of the levels, you can, define the levels here, or you can just leave it as unlimited, and, it will automatically create that particular hierarchical structure for you. It can also be dependent reference data set. So for example, a good example would be like state code. So if you're trying to import state codes, it will be dependent on country code, the one that you're creating. So, you can define, or maybe country code can be dependent on continent. So you can, select that. So I'm not going to define this one because we are trying to kind of, create a simple model here. So I gave the name and, a description, other things. Now for every reference data set, also code list, the three attributes are created by default, and out of which two are required, which is name and code. And description is again, it's not a required. So you can either, choose it to leave it empty or, uh, blank. And then you also have display settings. Display settings is nothing but what values or what column, right, you want for this particular reference data set to be, used or used while maybe while creating a crosswalk, by while, when you're defining a dependent, right? And suppose you select something here, sorry, not here, into other dependents, right? So I mean, how for this reference data set, right? What exactly you would see in some other uh, asset. So that's what display attributes is about. Now stakeholders tab again, lets you add users, and you can, give various privileges to those users. But okay. So okay, and one more important thing to note about reference data set is whatever information you define here or add here, right? It's carried over or it trickles down to all the code lists that you create inside this reference data set. So once you define this property, you define the structure and maybe, attribute, all these information would be carried down to all the code lists that you're creating automatically. So let's just save this demo country code. Okay. Okay, so I was successfully able to save this reference data set, and automatically I get this history tab in which you'll be able to see, history row wise, like what all changes was done and, what all values were added based on the fields and modified by whom and date and time. So we also have history tab on reference data set. And if you come back to the summary page, right, you'll be able to see that an enterprise demo country code is automatically created. And this is nothing but, as I mentioned earlier, to help the organizations have that single version of truth for their reference data. So if I click here on my left panel, I'll be able to come to automatically, open that particular code list. So now first I created reference data set, and now I'm going to, work with this code list, right? So if you look closely, there are no values here because we have, not added any records onto this code list. And code list, if you remember, I had mentioned it is again a container which, has or yeah, which has the actual records or the code values that stores the actual records or the code values, right? So that is what a code list is. Crosswalks, will come to it later. Okay, so if you come to the summary tab, you'll be able to see the reference data set via, this enterprise demo country code is inside demo country code. And we also have, few additional fields that we are providing. So now you can provide version of the code list, which was not available, in the reference data set. So you can have code list with different versions. You can also add the description, also have an additional description there. If you want to add more information, then you can also select from what application this code list is created. So this is an enterprise by default, right? So I'm just going to select enterprise there. Also, we have some additional field or, latest enhancements that have come out, like external URLs. So code list, right? It can be either externally mandated or it is internally authored by your organization. So I mean, when it is externally mandated, right? We are providing you the capability to sorry for that. We are providing you the capability to add the URL name and the link, right? And you can save it and kind of have that information available that from where this code list is coming from. So that, and also we have this notification recipients in which you can add email and phone number of stakeholders or people outside of Informatica who would like to get updated you know uh, for any changes that happens to this particular code list. And for that, I mean, there are more things that needs to be set up in CAI. But yeah, I mean, this that information, right, of the external stakeholders or recipients can be saved here. So you can define a name, the contact type, email and phone, and the contact detail, right? So I'm not going to save anything here. And then again, inside a code list, you have the status draft. So if you see here the draft and approved by, and also some of the properties from reference data set, right, was carried over, and it came to the enterprise uh, code list, right? And then coming on to the definition tab, you can see again, inside this code list, you have name, code, and description. And again, the display attributes, which can be changed to something else. And this is what will be shown when you are using this particular code list, while creating a crosswalk or using it as a dependent, right? And you can also have an advanced mode here in which you can create combinations of this display attribute. So you can, select to see. If you have selected name, then you can have code or description. And this is what you choose to see, when you're using this particular code list for creating some other asset. All right. So this is the definition tab. Now, again, we also have history in code list and, stakeholders. And workflow, there is a completely separate section for workflow, and I'm going to demo in that. So I'm not going to talk about workflow today. All right. So now let's, so this is the data model that we created. We defined a reference data set, and inside that we have a code list. But if you want, enterprise code list, and that is what I'm going to use. But if you want, some other code list, you can also create a code list using that same reference data set. So I selected code list there, and I'm going to use demo country code and click OK. And suppose, I want to give us SAP country, right? Maybe version 1, and then, description, additional description, and as I mentioned earlier, right? Those are the things I can define. So this is how a different code list can be created. So I'm not going to save it. You can just discard it if you don't want to save the changes, and it would not be saved. Now, let's try and import values in this enterprise demo country code. So we have these icons here, and compare. I'll just come after, we are done with this import. We have this settings in which you can kind of choose what kind of view you want. And we have this import values. So once you click on this import values, you can, select demo country code. So I already have this. I have, some CSV files created here. And let me just select the first one. Okay. And I selected the file here, and then, this intelligent file import, what it does, it parses that particular CSV file. And let me just show you that CSV file. This is the one. So a CSV file will have, just name, code, description, and maybe if you have more attributes, then you can also, have those attributes and values inside that. And it has all the code values that I want to import into my, reference 360. So coming back to my application, the intelligent file import, it parses the CSV file, and you can have various import settings that you can do, uh, define from where it is starting, if you have a header or no, date patterns, etc. And then when you click on next, it will give you like, what are the source columns that you have, what are the values inside it, and it maps automatically, to the fields that you have inside your target, which is nothing but the code list that we just created, right? The empty code list from the CSV file. So if you look here, right, it also gives you, some icons here showing that, okay, this field mapping that is created is of high confidence. You can also have, medium or low confidence. You can also manually map. Like suppose I close this and I want to manually map the name. So, it will show that user mapped fields are also available there. So intelligent file import kind of, gives you a lot of options to use while importing a file. Then I'll just do next. And it will show me the preview of the first 10 records that would be imported. And then just click on import. And then it shows me a message that started import job. And if I want to see the progress of this import job, we have this My Jobs panel in which we show you the progress of the jobs that are running, import and export. And also we have this batch import that we support using CDI, which is data integration. And for that, I have a separate video that you can view to get more information on that. So on My Jobs page, you'll be able to see the progress of your job. And if you see here, right, it went to success. If you click on success, you'll be taken to the, one second, it's taking time to load. You'll be taken to, the progress of the job and, various steps, transfer, load and index for search. And, you'll be able to kind of drill down and see more information for each of the steps. Or you can just, click on this enterprise demo country code, and that particular code list in which you are trying to import gets open. And if you see here, right, all the values from the CSV file got imported here, right? So we started with a basic data model in which we created a country code, and inside that we, had enterprise demo country code, right? Now let's go back to our slide. Okay, and now so that was basically, I showed you how to create a country code and import values into it, right? Now let's talk about more advanced data models that can be created in Reference 360. Now, reference data is not as simple as, just name, code, and description, right? It can have multiple attributes in it. It can maybe a date, or, a reference data set can be dependent on some other reference data set, right? Or it can be hierarchical in structure, like industry classification or default attributes. So now in the later, in the next coming part, I'm going to show you more advanced models that can be created. Like if you see this particular slide, right, the state codes that is created with all the default values, maybe attributes like name, code, and description, it can be dependent on a country code, right? Or we can create a hierarchical code list, like NAICS code, which has, various levels of code values inside it. You can also define a code list which can have multiple attributes inside it, and can also be dependent on some other code list or reference data set like currency or country, right? So in my later section, I'm going to talk about these kind of advanced form. All right. So let's go back to the environment, and now we already have country code. Now let's try and define a state code there. So again, to define a state code, first I'm going to define a reference data set which is demo state. And again, remember, reference data set is nothing but grouping of all of your code list, right? So it can be like, I can have state code list from different applications, which, I want to group by demo state. So that's what I'm trying to do here. So again, state would be geography. Okay, I'll make it as public, and let's keep the priority as medium this time. I'll put as status as draft, and approved by my name. And in definition, I want this particular state to be dependent on a different reference data set, right? So state is always dependent on demo country code. So I have this demo country code here, and I'll select name there, display attributes. Or let's define this dependent in the code list, so that because if I define dependent here, right, I mean, each and every code list that I create will have to be dependent on that particular country code, which I don't want. So let's, not define the dependent here, and let's just save this particular reference data set. Right? And I'll automatically get an enterprise demo state created for me, which I'm going to click and open. I don't have any values right now. And when I go to definition tab, I can see name, code, and description here. And if I go to summary tab, I can see, okay. So for enterprise demo state, because it's already created, I cannot, define the dependency. So let me just create a new code list inside demo state. Okay. And let's just give it as SAP state codes. Okay. And on summary page, I gave all the properties that I wanted to define. And here, when I come, so before saving a code list, right, this is one point that people should remember. Before saving the code list, you will have to define either, the code list is hierarchical or dependent. Okay. So I want to make this code list, which is state code, dependent on country code. So if you see here, right, if you remember on the reference data set, I was just able to, select the reference data set because I was going to make that whole state reference data set dependent on country, demo country, which I did not want. So I came here, I selected dependent, and I selected demo country code. And inside that, I only have one code list defined as of now. So that is what will get listed. If I have more, all of it will get listed there. And display attributes would be name, right? So this particular state code is dependent on your demo country code. And I'm going to save this information. So if you see here, right, inside the values, you can see name, code, description, and now you have a dependency there. So if I try to import the value again for state code, let me just, So I have a CSV file called as demo enterprise state codes. And let me just open and show it to you. Demo enterprise, I think this is the one. Demo state code. Okay. Okay, so if you see here, right, in this particular